Well, good morning, everyone. It's a joy to be with you this morning. It seems like a lifetime ago that we all met, so I trust you have found yourself in your incarceration not too monotonous and that you're happy to be joining us this morning. My sister in law asked this week, "Do you have any plans for today?" Well, I've been gardening and weeding and digging and gardening and weeding and digging. Garden looks good now, and I've read a few things as well. Whilst outside in the fresh air, my thoughts went to a very famous encounter in a garden. Let's read about it, and it can be found in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 24, verses 1 to 12. At the crack of dawn on Sunday, the women came to the tomb carrying the spices they had prepared. They found the entrance stone rolled away back from the tomb, so they walked in, but once inside they couldn't find the body of the Master Jesus. They were puzzled, wondering what to make of this. Then out of nowhere, it seemed, two men, light cascading over them, stood there. The women were awestruck and bowed down in worship. The men said, "Why are you looking for the living among the dead? He is not here. He is risen. Remember how he told you when you were still back in Galilee that he had to be handed over to the Romans, to the sinners, to be killed on a cross, and in 3 days he would rise up." Then they remembered the words of Jesus. They left the tomb and broke the news of all this to the 11, and the rest, Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and all the other women with them, kept telling them all these things to the apostles. But the apostles didn't believe a word of it. They thought they were talking nonsense. But Peter jumped to his feet and ran to the tomb. He stopped to look in and found a few grave clothes. That's all. He walked away, puzzled, shaking his head. Both Celia's father and her uncle had an amazing ability to say a huge amount in a very few words, and some of their sayings are now legendary in our family. But in 7 small words, we have the most amazing truth that probably has ever been uttered. He is not here. He is risen. Let's imagine the scene. Firstly, the disciples had lived with, travelled with, shared food with this preacher from Galilee. They had seen miracles performed. They had seen thousands fed. They had seen men raised from the dead and people healed, and they had learned about a new way of life. Suddenly, he is arrested at night, tried before a kangaroo court, beaten and humiliated and crucified, the most painful and horrendous death that the Romans had invented. Their whole world had been turned upside down. Sounds a little bit like today, doesn't it? They had left families, friends, businesses and homes to be with this man, and suddenly he was gone. And so was their hope. They must have gone through a whole variety of emotions from Friday to Sunday, culminating in a total lowering of morale, and they would have found themselves cloaked with the black dog of depression. They had probably forgotten Jesus' words about rising on the 3rd day. Such was the depth of their grief. Then, early in the morning, they've come to pay their respects to their dead master, and then to prepare the body, only to hear these life-changing words. I wonder how the Roman guards explained the night's happenings to their commander. The Romans were desperately afraid that there might have been something in his words about coming back from the dead, and they didn't want an insurrection on their hands, led by a popular itinerant preacher. The tomb had been well guarded, and the soldiers probably had strict instructions not to allow anyone near the grave, not to fall asleep, and to make sure that the body was there in the morning. They knew the penalty for failure would be extreme and brutal. It is no wonder that the first governor of Exeter, known then as Isca, had committed suicide rather than face the penalty for disobeying orders. But as soon as they reported their loss, the Roman False News Bureau swung into action. They needed to minimise and trivialise this news, to the extent this great happening has been trivialised today into lambs, bonnets, for the children, of course, eggs, and finally into Easter bunnies. But if we're not careful, we can trivialise our relationship with God in the same way. The disciples probably only heard the first 4 words, "He is not here," and failed to hear the remainder, "He is risen." And as a result, we can do the same. And as a result, we miss out on a newness of relationship, a joy and a peace that is insurmountable, and a quiet assurance that we are totally forgiven. All because he not only died, but he rose from the grave. Here's some homework for you. Take yourself home, tuck yourself away somewhere, no distractions, no TV, no iPad, no phone, no children if possible, and read 1 Corinthians chapter 15. It will certainly speak to you as it spoke to me. So he is risen indeed. God bless and a happy Easter.